Hello, good people. It is Brian. I am back for the Peerless Gamer as we go through Ecovian. Uh, I think the campaign probably will be named the Tome of Seven Wilder. The hope you've enjoyed what we've done so far, or what I've done so far. Um, I'm slowly making my way through D&Difying and fateifying the system, kind of a nice happy medium with regards to um, you know, play mechanics and magic and systems like that. I would like it to be more narrative than crunchy, but I understand that you need the crunchy to be narrative, in case, for solo folks like myself, when we run out of ideas, we need the randomness of the dice, which, as you can see, I'm changing up my dice mechanic a little bit. And, sometimes we on the fly, and when we're nervous like this, when we're streaming to you find people, uh, things start to get a little nervous. You want to make sure that you're introducing enough randomness and we're not railroading ourselves because we want a specific outcome, obviously, but um, maybe for drama purposes, you don't want everything to finish up like a sitcom where everything is resolved in 20 minutes and everything is a happy ending. Sometimes there are no happy endings. Um, one of the things I wanted to talk about was, as I'm prepping and continuing to prep and probably forever prep for solo RP and deciding on a narrative game type system to use, which I think Fate is the way. I just think that maybe some of the numbers for D&D and Pathfinder and those are the crunch that you need for various genre. So I have been poking around the internet as I am wont to do. And actually, I went through some bookmarks that I've had forever. And, those of you who know Sky Flourish on the interwebs, there are several. Sky Flourish is a homebrew maker, an independent craftsman or person, if you will, that creates content, has a Patreon, has a YouTube. Sky Flourish isn't paying me to pimp out their content, but I've been really the lazy GM as well, if you will. But I have been very happy with the content and the method by which I pull that information in a way. And I'm a big fan of Reddit, homebrew, unearthed arcana Reddit, and those. And so I've been following Sky Flourish for a while now, and um, the Lazy GM has a lot of good content on their site. If you go to their Patreon, their YouTube channel as well, you see, they have the Lazy Dungeon Master. So they talk about a bunch of different things with regards to solo GMing as well, which and tables and creating content in short amount of time, short amount of work. So again, they're not paying me for this, but one of the things that I did rediscover recently, because I have this bookmarked on my site here, is the reference document that they use and their GitHub. That's for something else, but so there's several things on here that I picked back up, or like, hey, I should use this, because one of the things I was trying to do. Oh, my bad. That's not very good, is it? Um, so, um, ah, crap. Okay. Thank you, OBS. Thank you. So Sky Flourish has a ton of stuff on the site here. The artisanal database is actually quite good. It is a database of values for generating tables. I'm assuming the database, I have not put it into an LLM yet to be able to do queries against, like a RAG, like a retrieval augmented generation. So if you wanted to make queries against it, I do need to review that. So there's generators, there's magic items. You can go in here. There's, it's a JSON file with magic items in it. So there's key value pairs based on, various bits here, descriptions of those things. And, if you pull this down and opened it into something like Visual Studio, which I can do, you'll see the hierarchy for that. For a JSON blob is a data format, for those of you who are not computer savvy, a way of representing data in a structure that allows you to create a hierarchical structure or to assign various values to things. Like if you are creating a magic item, for instance, in this case, like what he's got in here, one of the the ways of describing it, for like aspects, for instance, or an aspect or an ability that it can use. So for magic spells or for magic items, you might have like the name of it, how expensive it is, what it does. So description colon, and then the description, you might have value colon, the value in gold pieces or copper pieces or platinum. Any like for a creature, it would be like where they live, what immunities, resistances, what kind of spells they could cast. So you might have spells can cast, and then colon, it would be like fireball, poison, breath, etc., etc. Um, so yeah, they have a ton of they have a ton of that in there. They have the SRDs in here as well. So the various SRDs. So you have the Creative Commons 5.1 and the new 5.21, which is the newest hotness that they have available, which I'm covering up in my stream because I'm a moron. There you go. Okay. Magic items, they have various HTML related things. So they have the SRD and HTML. You can look at the methods. So this would be very similar to a key value pair where you have a label and something that describes that label or whatever. But that's a style sheet thing. But it's a very similar key value pair kind of deal. The one thing that I did like was I was going to Sepeku, the people who make the awesome maps and the icons and the tokens. I wanted to create some tokens because eventually I'd like to get into battle and I'd like to be able to move tokens and say, oh yeah, this is where that person is. Or maybe when I'm talking to somebody, the token will pop up on the screen and then my token will pop up on the screen as my character. And then it's like, they kind of gray themselves out as they're talking, and I have to figure out how I'm going to do that. If it's going to be, hot king, the dimming, if you will, kind of like you might see in a JRPG cutscene from like Final Fantasy or something like that. But yeah, so Skyflourish has a token generator, which it's beautiful in its simplicity. I will say, I don't want to say that it's not complicated. It isn't complicated. It runs in JavaScript, which is great, and it runs in your browser, which is even greater because it's like huge deal here. So you go into tools, the token maker's right here. You download an HTML file. It's got JavaScript in it, and a lot of the other generators they have. I don't know who the person is specifically. A JavaScript based. So everything runs in your browser. The generators, those kinds of things. I can actually read it, and I don't understand JavaScript, but I understand. Oh, they're pulling from these tables, and they're munging it together, and they get these things, and it's really great. It's very similar, very simplistic but effective in its design. So if I go in here and I go to exit, you get your VTT token generator, which I want to show the whole thing. There we go, VTT token generator. And there we go. So you choose a file. So let's say, got a, made fun. It was, so you can scroll here with your mouse, and if you want to, this one's not going to be pretty because, obviously it's got gray bars on it for the, it has to be a certain size. So if you want to put, let's say I'm talking to this fine this NPC right here. So you could create a ring, ring. God damn it, that gets me every time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love that meme, and it gets me every time. You can change the ring color on it, and now ideally, if you're using this for publication or you're using this for commercial use, you might want to get the permission of the person in the using the icons. You know, uh, the problem I had with Sepeku and then was like it was $50 a month to get access to their token generator, and I was like, fuck. I don't have $50 a month to be able to pop on making tokens, right? Unless I'm making 1,000 tokens, and then it's like I don't need it anymore after that. I just need something as simple, and as long as I can, find royalty-free art, I will use those things, or memes in this case. So hopefully this won't get a CDMA take or a DMCA takedown or what have you. But you can, change the border and then generate the token. Once you've done so, did y'all see the pop-up? Okay, so there's a pop-up here where when you click on the ring color, it asks you to choose the ring color. For OS X, it's like very similar to how you might see in GIMP or Krita or one of those other ones where it's got like the color wheel up top, it's got the color bars, and you can set whatever version of that you want there. So let's say I set orange because it, kind of or yellow because it kind of goes with Pikachu. And then you can generate the token once you close that dialog box, and you generate the token, and it will create okay, so file, open file, and downloads token 2, and there you go. So it creates a token that looks like that. And so you might be able to dance it up a little bit and remove the background on it. I didn't give me the option to do so, but I just found these tools are all very helpful in this case to be able to do what you need to. It doesn't remove the white background, so that's something you might want to look at if you are wanting to put this on a battle map. So you would color open this in a GIMP or something like that, or a photop.com, and remove the background, remove this, the gray bit here on the background to be able to get rid of that. Of course, if you remove the gray here, you'd want to just fill this and then remove the gray, but yeah, or make it black if it's super black in the background. But I just like this. It's a nice quick and dirty token creator, which I think is what is the synthesis of the lazy GM in this case. It's not a lot of work, but you get what you need right out of it. So ideally, what I will do is find stuff that's already in the public. I will give credit where credit is due. Unfortunately, this one is a fairly decently known meme. I don't know who made this. But if you know who the original creator of this, Pico Tip meme is, let me know. Anyway, so one of the other things I was working on was trying to find attributes, because I don't want it's amazing how many different systems out there, all use the same tropes, right? So dwarves, short, tough, drink a lot, live in mines. Everything is the same. Elves, cute, beautiful, whatever, immortal, fae, live in forests, like trees, magical, live a long time. Gnomes, artificers. Oh, and dwarves, crafts people. They like to hammer on shit. Gnomes, curious tinkerers. Best artificers, kind of thing. I was trying to mix some of that up because that shit's boring. It's like same tropes, same stereotypes. If I was a dwarf, would I want to always, oh, you think I live, Scottish accent? Do you think I work in a mine all day? That kind of thing. Ideally, I'd like them to do something else. Not that there aren't mines here, but it's like, who decided to stick the dwarves in the mines? I mean, we see it in Snow White and whatever, but I was like, maybe they want to do something else. Maybe they like oceans, and maybe they like, you know, ships, and maybe they like living in town, and maybe they're business people or something like that. Um, so I was trying to work different aspects into them that isn't, you know, Scottish accent, likes to drink a lot, Viking-esque, works, underground, dark vision, uh, they like their axes and their long beards. And so yeah, I was working on that, and because ideally I'd like to have different kinds of um, methods by which they do something here. So let me see, campaign. So I was working on some of those last night. Um, I didn't clobber everything having to do with dwarves, but I thought, oh, maybe they like to live outside. Maybe they're not like elves where they live in trees and shit. But maybe they like to be out in nature. They're explorers. Um, okay, they're strong. Maybe they're dense. Maybe they have a dense muscle mass. That could be true. Crafts people, I didn't get rid of that because I thought, oh, maybe they're and I was like, well, maybe instead of intolerance to alcohol, or immunity to poisons, or whatever it is that every dwarven race has had since Tolkien and before. Maybe if they live outside, they have some kind of weather sense, or maybe they can tell what the weather is like because they live in the nature, right? Gnomes, I thought was kind of interesting. They're often sometimes mistaken for a lighter dwarf in this case. And I didn't want halflings and gnomes and dwarves because I was like, I don't want to say they're all the same, but we have other races that we can put in here, and I was other species, if you will, and so I thought maybe they were a cousin of the dwarves. Maybe they decided to maybe they're an offshoot or something like that. Maybe they're like they evolved on a different continent, or they evolved across the canyon, like you see with some animal species, where it's like now that they've been separated, they become something different. So maybe they don't have the uh, the short, maybe they're not square when they're on the ground. So gnomes and halflings are probably very similar, I would imagine, in my world. Kind of an amalgam of those. Uh, and so I still kept them technically minded, because I thought, well, if dwarves have are artisans, or they're craftspeople, or they like to weave, and maybe the dwarves are not fans of you know metal and the forge and whatever. And I was thinking maybe the gnomes and some of the other groups might like to do that, because I'm already creating other species that don't that are underground, or work that way. So um, but yeah, so ideally, what I with the guy with the idea, technically and technologically minded, I didn't get too far from the artificer kind of thing, but I thought perhaps they you know they are they're the non-magic user, so they might be the gunslingers, they might be the artificers. They created the airships. They create communication methods that are non-magical in this case. Uh, maybe they work with other groups. Maybe they're the logistic folks. Maybe they're the people that create things because maybe they've shunned magic in this case. Um, or maybe they're the realists. It's not really magic, it's energy, right? And maybe they figured out how to collect that energy in some way, which they have, and use it to power their systems. My thought was, where is it? Yes, they have created this. For those of you who don't see what it is a battery. They've created the battery, right? They've created a way to store solar energy, and use it to do work. And so that is what that is what their claim to fame is. Maybe they are business minded. Maybe they guard that jealously. Maybe they all the technology they have is kind of and the methods by which they create that is like super secret. Maybe they jealously protect their IP. Um, And so the way they create and store batteries is completely foreign idea to everybody. But they know that the wonders they create, the airships that are powered, without magic, and they use like a hot air balloon, but I'm imagining, hot air balloon type things. Um, some of these things will come up. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I've already spent 20 minutes, which I shouldn't have done that. But maybe this will be a longer stream than usual. But my thought was these things are coming along. There may be some vignettes, and we'll have a vignette today, I think, based on our main character that will kind of maybe be a bit of a lore dump in addition to what I've just kind of meted here. So. In addition, we've got Warren folk, we've got Tortles, the Taurans, who are the bovine folk, the ungulates, if you will. They're going to be, obviously barbarians, but they, are also druidic in nature. So maybe they, are in harmony with nature. Kobolds, the last one, I love the idea of the kobold being like a dragon larvae, or if you're talking about, they grow up into dragons, but it takes them several hundred years. So, and so, they, uh, maybe that's their secret that not everyone knows, that they eventually will become dragons, or maybe there's different methods here. So I have an idea that the kobolds are dragons. They also live underground. Maybe they get in. Maybe there's some conflict with them and the Warren folk that happen. And then of course we have our avians. I think I've talked about some of the avians and the turtles before. We have aquatic species as well as air species because we have a lot of ocean around us. So I would said, you can't have a nice empty ocean, right? So there's got to be some aquatic species. There might be Sahagan. There might be turtle. There definitely is turtles. I'm guessing Sahagan, but turtles will have to have some sort of conflict, right? They have to have people that they're not happy with. Maybe they have territorial disputes. Maybe they have territorial disputes with some of the topsider folks. Maybe there's a splinter faction there. I'm reading Nemesis games from the Expanse, so the OPA has splinter factions as well, which I'm finding out about. Well, I didn't. This book has a splinter faction of the OPA in it, and so understanding that maybe not all turtles are happy about that, but I kind of put it in reverse here. So the turtles are fast. They're very speedy. They only start slowing down when they get older, and as they get older, then maybe they get wiser, and kind of bringing in elements from the Aiel of Wheel of Time, where they're all warrior. The women are the warriors and everything, and then all of a sudden they give up their spears and they become wise women. So they kind of, I don't want to say slow down, but then they change careers, right? So my thought was, maybe the elders or the older turtles become wise people, or maybe they develop their magic skills that way. So I have them with spirit summoning and things like that. So the avians, of course, I was thinking they're powerful psychics. They might have a secret, if you will. I was thinking about they protect portals to other worlds that might exist that we aren't aware of, that kind of thing. So some of these things, it's going to come out in the role play, but some of it's going to, maybe there's a couple that there's still a couple secrets that I will uncover when I roll a die and go, oh well, what is it that they're doing that's like super amazing, or they're mega secret, like the batteries. So anyway, I'm still working on some of that because I don't really see magic kind of being a thing just yet. We can work through that. So all right, let me rearrange some stuff here because I had to resize some. Oh, and I have my name generator. I didn't put that down since the last time. So if we need names, I've got names. I also to find aspects, because Fate does have sites where you can get aspects, but I have a ton of stuff from GURPS that I bought back in 2011, 2012, 2013 for, as you can see, I've bought a few things from Warehouse 23, which is Steve Jackson's site for GURPS. I've got a lot of dungeon fantasy stuff, Far Avalon. I've also got some sci-fi stuff for like books with like deck plans. Oh, that sucks. Deck plans for ships and things for sci-fi stuff, but a good number of items for um, mecha. I've got the GURPS stuff, obviously some of the first stuff I bought for 4th edition. I bought some of the classic 3rd edition stuff having to do, like Conan, um, Creatures of the Night. So, and I've downloaded some of those. So I've got Dungeon Fantasy Adventures. I've got looking at advantages and things that we could add to them, like various things when you're going to create your character in GURPS. You can say, well, I want it to have channeling capability, so energy channeling. Or I want clerical investment. So if they believed in gods, clerical investment would be being able to create clerics, to be able to combat reflexes, common sense. Some of these don't make a lot of sense, but I was just trying to use this list and this content to give me ideas. Damage resistance, cybernetics, whatever. Cybernetics may be something in our world, but it's not like typical cybernetics. Danger sense, so maybe the avian population is a danger sense kind of thing, like a Spidey or something like that. Dark vision's always popular. Detect, or other things. So I'm just looking through some of these things to go, okay, what is a good idea? What is some of these? And if you create undead, like doesn't breathe, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, would be one of those things that happen too. But they have doesn't sleep, dominance. So yeah, I'm just going through that. I have a ton of these things I downloaded last night, GURPS fantasy stuff. So they have. This is what got me on the, hey, everybody has the same shit, right? Even in GURPS, they're like, oh, dwarves are a race of miners, metal workers, and craftsmen. They live underground. They're under, I'm like, wow, this is the same shit as Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, okay. Oh, they have magic resistance too. So they pretty much took the D&D version of dwarves and put them into GURPS. I'm like, that sucks. That's just, yeah. So we are, alcohol tolerance. Yes, they drink a lot. They can detect gold. They have an extended lifespan. They're very strong. And they have night vision. And then you've got the elves, which, 35 points for a dwarf. You need twice as many points to make an elf. They're pretty. They have magic inherent. They have perfect balance, telescopic vision, so they can see really far. And they have a pretty voice, and they don't age, right? So all the stuff you would see if you were Legolas, right? So yeah, I was just looking through some of these things, and I found out, well, they're doing the exact same thing that D&D is doing, with the same tropes, the same stereotypes. And I was like, maybe turn that on its head a little bit. Maybe the dwarves not only are craftspeople, but they also, are good sailors. Like, Nathan is. Nathan's a dwarf. He likes to be on a ship, which is probably complete opposite of what you would see in a D&D dwarf. Or at least somebody was, I forget. Who was that didn't like? Yeah, I want to say that there was a book series I read where the dwarf didn't like. But oh yeah, it was it Wheel of Time? Was it? I think so. Somebody didn't like being on ship. And I think they were a dwarf who didn't like being on ships. Got seasick and such. So yeah. All right. So yeah, between Sky Flourish and just the stuff that I've been looking at here, that was I'm trying to, I don't want to say try to change too much, but just trying to break some of the stereotypes up, make things a little more interesting in this case. So ideally we will have regular ships, we'll have airships, there's some technology, gunslingers could be a thing. I don't know. I was reading some of the point he had stuff on how to make guns not suck or be stupid. There's no shortage of that online as well. Either using Matt Mercer's gunslinger skill. I think somebody else had something like Moxie or whatever that you could generate, very similar to Grit, like what Matt Mercer does for his gunslinger. It's just making aspects for those things so that it would, kind of translate into fate or, whatever I'm calling this now. So To the dice bit, instead of rolling these 4 and having to add, my thought was, this is the primary die, and this is the die I subtract from. So when I roll the dice, I will just subtract this from this, and I don't have to figure out pluses and minuses and whatever. So like I rolled a 4, and on the clear die, I rolled a 1, so it's 3, right? 4 minus 1 is 3. It's almost the exact same as this, but I don't have as many dice to have to carry if I travel, or, I don't have to worry about dice. Everybody has die 6, right? So I can just decide, one die is the minus die. So yeah, so 2 minus 4, -2. So there you go. And eventually, if I just decide I don't want to do the, I want to keep the aspects from Fate, but I want to use die 20, I've still got my big fat die, and I've got my, 2 die 10 that I can always use to continue the game, and hopefully it will be somewhat, seamless. So, all right. So, get my name list back up here. Oh, that's not, there it is. Name list, just in case. I can actually hide that for now. There we go. All right. So, one of the things that I wanted to do, and one of the things I've learned with that I kind of liked with Ironsworn when I was using it for Starforged, was the idea of a vignette, or something that takes you, kind of gives you background. And the idea is you're supposed to open every gaming session with a vignette when it needs it. So what I thought I would do this time is we left Nathan with him waiting after talking to Blaze, who is the head of the Silent Accord. If you remember correctly, Nathan went down into an underground area that he was aware of from the Gilded Rose, which is the tavern that the Silent Accord uses as a front. Bexley, who is Nathan's contact in the Silent Accord, was told about the unmitigated disaster of Nathan losing the tome, which was later found out to be the tome of Seven Wilder, which holds lore and forgotten knowledge about Freeport, that Nathan was to hand off to somebody who had a red flower in their lapel. That person didn't show up, and before that could happen, Nathan was overtaken by someone or somebody's, knocked unconscious, and robbed, and the tome was taken. Nathan was unconscious for a good amount of time, as far as he can tell. Made his way back to the Gilded Rose. Told Bexley. Bexley's like, crap. Bexley is a Warren folk in this case. And Bexley in this case said, well, we'll need to go see Blaze. So they went down and seen Blaze, explained the situation. Blaze, or somebody in the room, appears to have some kind of psychic capability. It might be Blaze themselves, and was able to speak without being heard. It was speaking inside of Nathan's brain and Bexley's brain, and Bexley's handler or manager was already also there. So, Bexley's middle management, there's upper management, and of course Blaze is. It was important enough that Blaze needed to know. And the gist that we got of the conversation was the tome was going to be used by the person that paid the Silent Accord. Blaze was hoping to have some side discussions with that person, but the fact that maybe the person who paid for the tome didn't get the book is distressing to Blaze, because it's interfering with guild business, and is a reputation hit for the guild, especially if the buyer comes back, which we don't know if the buyer actually got the book. So if it's a double cross, then we will go on the offensive. We will go against that person because they shafted us for money, right? There was a good bit of money that was supposed to change hands. If somebody else took the book and now the person who was supposed to get the book is unhappy, we'll have to work together or something like that. So Um, Blaze said that they would come back and talk to us the next day. It should also be mentioned that somebody in the room has an alligator familiar, of which the alligator appears to have some sentience and some free thought, because not to put Chekhov's gun out here, because I don't know if I'll actually use the alligator, but the alligator looked up at Nathan and you can see it shake its head like, what the hell are you doing? So I just found that I just found that kind of hilarious when I added it. Familiars, summoned creatures very similar to Pokemon might exist in this world. So just to, let people know. And also psychic capabilities exist, psychic powers exist here in this setting, in this world. On Ecovian, Um, there's also a couple of other methods by which people can do magic. Nathan, maybe we'll talk about that during the vignette. So anyway, Blaze and Bexley told Nathan to go home, get some rest. Obviously, Nathan's been beat to hell, and I think the vignette is going to start as like a spot between the discussion here. So what we find out, Nathan heads to where he normally hangs out. It's a building that is ran by the Silent Accord. Again, if you've read Mistborn, you've read about where Vin stays. There might be some buildings where Nathan can hang out. Find a place on a floor to be comfortable. Maybe as a sack of grain or something. Maybe there's a business that is friendly to the Silent Accord. Nathan and his group that he hangs out with, because they're not all one big family, bivouac in this place. So maybe he has a place that he holes up from time to time and recovers. He's hurt, but not hurt enough where you might need to risk having a doctor or getting some kind of magical healing. It's a bump on the head. Maybe he's got a boo-boo, is bleeding a little bit, but he's had worse in this case. Being knocked unconscious is sometimes a occupational hazard in some cases. So he heads home. He's recovering. He knows he's going to have a headache the next day, so maybe he's got some ale or something. And he, spends the rest of the night talking with folks about that. They're all like, "Man, getting so that you can't have an honest business. Being able to, give away your goods or whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, right?" So stretches into the evening and he's getting sleepy, so he lays down and he takes a nap. And so, or he goes to sleep in this case. And so, on the world of Ecovian, there is the dreamscape. So that this is some of the lore dump that I think I want to put out there. The dreamscape, if you want to imagine it, for some people, they have dreams. They don't actually know maybe that they're in the dreamscape, but if you've ever had a dream, maybe that's where the dreamscape exists. It's just you're not aware of the dreamscape. You're aware of the dream, but not necessarily where you're in. Think of it like a holodeck. You're in the holodeck on the Enterprise inside of a meadow. You perceive the meadow. You may go, "Oh, I realize I'm in a meadow," which isn't normal for me, but there's like a layer outside of the meadow. And but not a lot of people know of the dreamscape, right? And the fact that it is an area that we've created ourselves, right? Our own realms. If you talk about, being able to create a bag of holding and it's, a pocket dimension, if you will. What people on Ecovian don't realize is everyone has a pocket realm that they've created themselves when they dream, and it creates a bubble that their soul or their self, their being can go into from time to time. And so when you have dreams about anything, that is that is something that you build inside of your dreamscape. But some people can control that dreamscape so fully that they find themselves able to do other things. They can talk to spirits, they can talk to um, people, remotely, kind of like Teleron Riyadh, if you will, from Wheel of Time, which is ironically enough. Ideally, if you have learned enough, and this is where training comes in. So this may be, something that if you've ever had formal training with somebody like a mentor or something, they will teach you about the dreamscape. But in this case, Nathan has not had any of that. So Nathan has been plagued with dreams, bad dreams. His parents passed away while they were on a ship, hauling goods and services. So him and his brother and his family were on a ship, and Nathan has this dream from time to time because it was traumatizing, right? And the storm is, he's in this dream and he's sleeping fitfully, but it's the dream that he always dreads having. And as much as he tries to control it, it fails to control itself, and it resolves to the same ending, him passing out and waking up in cold sweat. He's on the ship. The ship is owned by his family. It is the, no, I don't know. Hell, we'll call it. Does it need a name? I don't know. The name doesn't matter in this case. I will say that the name probably doesn't matter for this, unless at some point in the future, it does matter. It's been a beautiful day. They are heading back from one of the local islands that is in the area. And they're heading back to not Freeport. They're heading back to the city on the opposite side of the island, in this case, where his aunt actually lives. And actually, that probably does need a name if we didn't have one. So, those are names like human or people names. So let's see if we can have like a city name generator. We'll call it Dosea. Dosea. And we'll call it Dosea. There we go. How about Fort Dosea? My thought was that they need to set places, so we'll put things, items, places. Fort Dosea. Aunt's home, and where Nathan lived as a child with family. All right. So Fort Dosea, which is on the other side of the island from Freeport, mercantile, everything is, I would say it's the more legitimate side of the island, if you will. Freeport's kind of a bit wild, a bit less, less ordered. You can get anything you want at Freeport for price, not necessarily up from Fort Dosea. They're on their way back from a very, lucrative trip from Fort Dosea. Maybe Nathan and his family, originally, because, as I mentioned earlier, dwarves have some weather sense because they like being out, and they can read the weather. They can read the tea leaves in the weather. The weather didn't appear to be a problem at the time, so they thought they were going to make good time. They had a good wind. They were heading towards Fort Dosea. They were, I would say, probably 2 or 3 hours away when, you know, I would say that, like, the hackles built up, or there was a shift in the wind that they didn't realize had occurred. They didn't expect it, because of what was going on. Uh, and by the time they had, they'd come out a good ways from, they were out in open ocean, and they maybe saw telltale birds, so they knew they were a couple hours away from the Fort de Saya, and they see dark clouds in the distance coming towards them in the direction that they're coming from the fort. uh, Nathan's mother and father kind of looked at one another. Nathan actually was like, "Oh, that doesn't look normal. That doesn't look good." And they were set upon by the storm. And Nathan, being 10, 12 years old, has spent time on ships. He's sailed with his mother and father several times. So has his brother. They knew what they needed to do. They started pulling the sheets in, making sure everything was all solid. Um, but there was a rogue wave that knocked the ship over. Uh, come without warning. They didn't know why. It didn't look like it was, didn't feel like it was magical in nature. Just that it's a rogue wave, right? Um, Father or mother was distracted in that case. Uh, the yard arm turned, and the ship was knocked over, and Nathan and his brother were pitched over into the water, and ship went down with whatever they were hauling at the time. Nathan was able to find a barrel, so his brother did too, and they rode out the rest of the storm, but they never found their mother and father. And uh, they did happen to be picked up by a crew, but it was probably 6, 7 hours later, after the storm had already abated. And Nathan and his brother spent a good amount of time recovering. The idea is, Nathan was unconscious when they found him. His brother had actually been holding on to him to keep him from slipping off of the barrel to, save him. So his brother's a few years older than he is, maybe 16, 17. So this is, Nathan finds himself, adrift in the ocean with his brother, and the dream is going well, going as well as it can be, because he knows the inevitable conclusion, because his dreaming has been directed thusly. Um, as Nathan is dreaming about the storm, and he sees the lightning and the thunder and the rain, he starts. He realizes it's the dream, but what he starts seeing is shapes in the lightning, and patterns on the deck of the ship, that he, in his directed dreaming, he's like, yes, I can make this change. I can, I don't have, I hate this, with this going, and he knows that it's the dream, but he starts seeing other things that he's like, I don't recognize this from my dream. I don't recognize this when it happened. This is something that didn't occur. And um, there's various, I don't want to say runes, but there's various shapes in the lightning strikes, or what have you. And so the dream ends, and Nathan wakes up in his cold sweat like he normally does. He's in the building. It's somewhat chilly, but it's getting close to morning. This is one of those dreams you don't wake up from and then decide, well, I'm just going to go back to sleep, because it's just, he's plagued with dreams, right? He lost half his family. He didn't enjoy living with his aunt because of too many restrictions or what have you. So that's why he went off on his own, much to the chagrin of his brother and his aunt, because those were the only family he has left. He still talks to his brother, obviously. So, but he wakes up and he's walking around. He maybe grabs his ale. It's gone stale by now, because it's, not good ale, right? Maybe it's like almost like a grog or something. And he's taking a drink, and he's, as he reaches up and he goes to drink and he closes his eyes, and the patterns that he saw, flashes again as if they were lightning in his head, and he's like, I don't know what the hell those are. He looks at him. He doesn't quite understand. Um, what I think I want him to do is I do want to run a bit here. This is the question mark aspect at some point. I want to run some intelligence against it. So I'm gonna roll intelligence. And I'm gonna say that this is going to be. I'm gonna say it's fairly high, right? So I'm gonna say it's gonna be about a 5 difficulty. So his intelligence is 0, so he may not get anything this time, right? So it's a 5 difficulty. If it was a D&D difficulty, it might be a 25 in this case, because it's going to be pretty hard for him to be able to get this. He would pretty much have to roll a 6 and a 1, right, on these rolls to get it. So, and oh yeah, he definitely doesn't get it. He knows their shapes. In this case I rolled a 3 and a 6, so 3 minus 6 is -3. So he knows he saw something in the dream that isn't the same as what he saw before, and he doesn't quite understand what's going on there. So now, in a metadata sense, uh, people get their powers through trauma, very much like Mistborn. I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So he's gone through trauma. Maybe he's gone through another somewhat traumatic experience where he's had some brain damage, concussion in this case. Um, but maybe something is starting to manifest. So that's where we're going with that. So just give you a heads up. But right now, he can't tell because he rolled a 3 and a 6. So, um, but he knows that there was something that was different about the dream that he wasn't aware of in this case, and um, he's hoping he doesn't see those things again, or has the dream again for a long time. It doesn't happen very often anymore, but it is causing. It is disturbing every time. It wakes him up. He shouts out because the last things that he does in the dream is he's yelling for his mother and father. So when he wakes up, people are very unhappy because shut up, Nathan, God damn it, So to end the vignette in this case, Nathan is awake. Is the next morning. He was a little shook, and he's got ale mouth, which stale ale is blah. So the first thing he does, he goes and he gets some breakfast, maybe grabs a bun, grabs a little something to drink with it, maybe some cheap wine or something to kind of wash out the mouth. He knows he's got to go back to the Gilded Rose. Maybe they have a nice brunch or something. He got a little money from Bexley last night because he got mugged basically after he'd gotten knocked out. He'd been meaning to ask if anybody in his local group had taken him, because the cut purses they don't have any loyalty, right? So they would steal from each other as well as steal from members of certain members of the group. So um, I'd like to believe that Nathan is somewhat well liked by the group, but cut purses they don't have any loyalty in that respect. So um, it could just as easily been they only see the bag, they don't see the person, the face, right? So they'll steal from anybody. But he's got a couple jingly coins in his pocket. Went and got himself a bun or a pastry or maybe an apple, that kind of thing. Uh, he doesn't steal for no reason, right? He has a good reason to do so. He makes his way to the Gilded Rose. It is probably just maybe an hour after sunup, right, in this case. So he's in the Gilded Rose. The bar is always open at the Gilded Rose. There may not be anybody in there except the bartender, who we know is called Alara. And she's there. He walks in. She's like, "Wow, you had a rough night. You look like shit." And this is where those NPC tokens would come in, when she's like, "Oh, you look like shit," and he's like, "Yeah, thanks. I not telling me anything I don't know. Uh, is anybody here?" And obviously, there's nobody in the bar that you can see. Um, so obviously, he's asking, "Is anybody downstairs, or is Bexley there, or is Blaze there?" And she says that, "No, nobody's here, but go ahead and take a seat. I'm sure they'll be here soon." Uh, I don't know what Alara's relationship is with the upper crust of the group, but that's what it is. And obviously, the secret passage that is upstairs in the room that is never used, or hardly ever used, is one of the few ways down there. But what they didn't want was, if there was ever a raid on the tavern, the first place somebody would go look is in the back of the kitchen, or a trap door in the cellar, or something like that. So the bar has a separate cellar that doesn't actually go to the secret rooms that Blaze and them are in. That's why you go up the stairs, and you go through where the false wall panel is, and you go down the stairs that way. Um, so takes a he sits there. He's nursing his pastry. He's nursing his wine, and let's see if he notices anything. So in this case, let's see. Let's pull that up. Love that token I made. Let's see. Uh, challenges. Does he hear or see anything? Anything interesting that he? I'm going to say that this is probably a normal kind of thing. So we're just going to play it straight up. Just any normal day. 5 minus 3 is a 2. So in this case, he is sitting there having his breakfast, and there seems to be a bit of a commotion on the street. Yeah, I'm gonna say that there's a commotion on the street. He looks at Lara. Lara looks at him and goes, acting like, "Well, it wouldn't be us, I don't think. It's a little too early to be doing anything that would cause any suspicion." So he goes up, and he's looking out. I imagine the doors are very much like a tavern kind of thing, like in Old West days, where you might see them sway in or out like that. He takes a look outside, and he sees it. I want to roll. Well, okay, let me see if there's a activity generator here. Let me see, fantasy and folklore. Let's see. Let me see. The idea is I want something that will determine next actions. Generate next actions. It's not what I wanted right there. Okay. Um, I think what I'm going to do is, there's an overturned wagon. Maybe somebody who has come into town. Uh, Maybe they had a broken wagon, and the wagon axle has broken and the wheel separated. So the wagon broke down. So the wagon in this case is, I would say, a peddler, maybe somebody who's traveling as part of a caravan. It's not like a business person type traveling caravan. It's very expensive to ship things by airship. It's less expensive to ship things by boat. The caravans on the island are still the cheapest way to get things to and from the various villages and things on the island, because the ships can't go inland. They can go up the rivers so far, but Freeport is the second most legitimate, port on the island, behind Fort Dosea. And so apparently it was a wagon coming back to go to the port to load up things for the ships or to pull more things from the ships. And does he recognize the person who was driving? I'm going to pull out my percentage dice because this is a question. Does he recognize that person? And I'm going to say there's a 25% chance of yes, that he recognizes that person. Because there's a lot of people in town. He may not know everybody, but I'm going to say there's a 25% chance because this person may be fairly well known to the town, maybe less well known for him. So I'm going to roll my 2 die 10, 100 percentiles, right? This is an Iron Sworn type mechanic, but it'll be like, I asked the question, 25% chance yes, 26 and above, no, he doesn't know. 48. Okay, so he recognizes that there's a caravan wagon that has broken down. It's causing a ruckus because the contents of the wagon are spilling out onto the ground, and the person who he doesn't recognize necessarily is trying to keep people away from the wagon. Would Nathan help or hinder that person? Or is it even worth Nathan's time? I want to say, I want to say Nathan's had a pretty bad day. I don't think he wants to get involved. I don't think he wants to get involved in this game. What I want to do is ask the question, what else does he see? What were the items that were coming out of that? I want to say, so this was an Iron Sworn bit that I made up. Anything that as close to 100 as you get, the more valuable the objects are, right? So, wow. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Oh, okay, so the last gaming session on these dice, I rolled a -4, which is the worst thing you could possibly get. On this episode, I roll a 100. So, Jesus. Okay, so I may have to retcon some things here. What would be the most valuable thing that? Oh God, I don't. My thought is going to. Okay, so the most valuable thing that I think exists in this world are the crystals that are mined by the Warren folk on what would be, in the, if you looked at a world or the setting that we're in right now with Icovian, I've basically flipped upside down what the map looks like for the Caribbean. The mines for where the most of these crystals come from, which are turned into lenses for magical channelers, or in this case for the lore, it'd be like how gnomes create their batteries. More than a few of these spill out from wagon. And the commotion is that people are picking them up, and they're in various sizes, so they don't have to be very big. And I'm thinking along the lines of, like, my die 6 here. Some of, there may be a larger one that looks like this kind of thing. They're mined in various places. These are mined on the island as well in limited quantities, but the really big veins of where these crystals exist are found in what is Venezuela, but upside down in Incovian. So if you're imagining the Caribbean, where we're set here, and Freeport being where Port-au-Prince, Haiti is normally located, it would be in the area of Venezuela. And I'll have a map updated for that. That's where the Warren folk live. So Nathan immediately realizes what's going on here, right? And so I think once he sees what has dropped on the ground, and there's probably some gems, some of these crystals, and in this case we'll have to understand what crystal the color crystals are, because they may mean different things depending on what's going on. And there's other ways to use the crystals other than storing energy in them, as we'll find out as we progress through the system here. But getting these crystals may help him get into better, get back into the good graces of Blaze and them, because even though the mugging and the theft wasn't his fault, it doesn't look good, right? He should have done a better job. So I want I want Nathan to attempt to liberate maybe a crystal or two, if at all possible. I'm gonna say let me roll my die 6 and see how many are on the ground that he can see. There are 6 of various types. So I think this is going to be like a difficulty roll. What I want to do is, James is, I want to say there are other people around. I would say it's not busy, but there are, I would say, anywhere between 15 to 20 people walking around. They saw the wagon fall and break. We can always investigate that later, but there are some areas of the wagon have tipped and the contents have shifted. So there may be fabrics that come from the villages where people are creating those. There may be other things, but he sees 6 crystals. And there may be some people out there actually legitimately helping, but there may be more than a few people who are like, nah, I'm going to get some free stuff, right? So James's quick eyes and his awareness, which I would say is a constitution feature, sees the crystals in the ground, in the dirt maybe, and I'd say we're probably, 20 to 30 feet away. So maybe they're catching the sun, maybe they glint off the sun, and so James decides he wants to go and make a play. Right, he wants to get out there. He wants to, maybe if he can even grab one crystal, that maybe help offset some of the bad that he's got with the group. I'm going to say that if this was a difficulty rating, I want to say that it's going to be a medium difficulty. So we may have to add -1 to the rolls in this case. So he's going to use his dexterity, which he's actually quite dexterous, which is good. So we get to add that to it. And this is going to, what I'll do is I'll add the 5 to whatever comes out of this, and then take it against the outcome here. So depending on how he rolls here, we'll add the 5 to that. So, okay, so 4 -1 is a 3. We add 5 to that, so we get 8. And I was thinking that the medium was going to be around 7, right? So as we found earlier, the 5 was going to be somewhat difficult for him. So the 7 is probably going to be around what it was been. So I would say that he has managed to go out there. He is able to get close enough. Maybe he goes up and he covers a couple of the crystals with his foot. He's out there trying to, oh, hey, what's going on here? He may be trying to act to help in this case, but he's put his foot on a couple of the crystals that he's seen. Let me see how many he's actually got underfoot. I'm rolling with die 6 again, and we know that there's at least 6 that he can see. Okay, so they were fairly well put together. Don't ask me why the crystals fell out. Maybe they were in a bag or something that was inside the container on the wagon. Nathan has he couldn't exactly see how many he has, but there's really 5 under his feet, which is going to be huge if he can get any or all of these. All right, so in this case, actually, I should have the Fate solo. Let's see where's the Fate solo thing at. Everybody Fate solo. Yeah. All right, so I got the table up here for that. So plus 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 plus. All right, and then ooh, belly. Fate solo. There we go. Okay, so I should have had this up before, but this is what I would use. Should have probably used for that. There we go. All right, so when I'm done, you there. All right, so in this case, let's see. So we're asking that yes and no questions in the game. The top of the odds shows the likelihood of being true or false. Some results have 2 options. The first non-blank forces. We're not going to use the plus plus and minus minus, but so in this case, I would say our options were good, and we rolled a 4. And actually, obviously because I'm doing -5 to +5, I'm going to have to modify this. So add that to my action items for next session. If I continue using plus and -5, this may not be possible. But so we had a 4. So I would say yes, he was able to successfully help out, if you will. He's the carriage driver comes over and it's like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? And you see there's a couple of maybe the carriage driver's helpers trying to get things resituated and recollected because of the crash. And Nathan's like, I'm just here to try to help, man. I saw you were in trouble. And it feels like there's a deception here that I need to do. So, yeah, there needs to be like a deception roll. And I want to. All right, so I'm gonna say that it's poor odds because I think this guy. I want to feel like this driver, is not believing a lot of people in Freeport. I'm gonna say that there's poor odds on this. But I'm also tempering that by how much. Let's see, would be charisma. So in this case, his charisma. So we're going to adjust that accordingly. So 4 and 4. So he rolled a 5 minus 1, so that's a 4. He has a plus 4. I'm gonna say even with the pour, he's gonna be like, you know, the guy looks him up and down, kind of appraises him. Maybe Nathan still has some dry blood on his head. You know, maybe he wasn't able to get all of that. And yeah, the guy kind of softens it. Oh, well, thank you. And so Nathan is picking up the stuff that maybe he realizes isn't all that expensive, and keeps his foot squarely on what he appears to be the crystals, and helps fix. There might be some bolts of cloth. There might be some trinkets. Maybe there's some broken pottery or something that is fallen down. And the wagon guy comes up. He's like, "Damn it! I've already had problems making a profit on this trip, and this just made it even worse. If I didn't have what I had," and you see him kind of stop, and um, there's a distraction or something, and during that distraction, and I think the other thing we want to do here is it's going to be even odds, but I want to see if can Nathan use a sleight of hand, or is it possible for him to um, get that get those crystals into his pocket. And my understanding is that this is going to be a dirt road or a dirt path through the town, maybe some cobbles in places. I'm imagining it's an old, like in better years when Freeport was in its heyday, maybe it was a cobblestone, completely cobblestone, but now it's because it's old and disrepaired. There might be some areas where there's dirt or caked dirt or something. So um, the road is uneven. Maybe there's some potholes because cities have potholes. And Nathan is going to attempt to sleight of hand those into his pocket, or maybe he'll slip them inside of his boot because it'll be easier. So, um, so yeah, I'm gonna say that this is. I'm gonna say even odds, right? And okay, so that's a 4. With his dexterity, I think easily does that. He's able to, because he's pretty good at being a fence. So that means, he knows how to move stuff. And he's able to grab a handful of whatever it was under his boot. Maybe he reaches down and he's trying to adjust his boot, and he lifts up his heel and he scrapes underneath. And, as he's continuing on, he's got them in his hands. And as he's, adjusting his boot, he shoves them down inside the cop of his boot. That was my pretty leg for all of y'all who want to see that. And is able to easily, put those in there. I think at this point, he wants to make an escape. So is Nathan able to successfully walk away without being seen? And I want to use my percentage dice on this. You might be watching this, you're like, what kind of freaking mechanics has he got going on here? You're not wrong, right? And I'm starting to wonder if maybe the Iron Sworn mechanics, where I use percentile dice instead of the fate bit, is going to work here. Plus, percentile dice can more easily map to like D20 type stuff. So yeah, I know. So just bear with me here. So the question I'm asking is Nathan able to walk away without any problems? And so I'm going to say it's going to be about a 75%, based on the previous thing where the wagon guy is there. So I'm going to say 75 or lower is a yes. It's always going to be 75 or lower is a yes. Everything is 26. Okay, so Nathan is able to slip those into his boot. The crystals in his boot. We'll figure out what those are later. I think he saw glints, so it's like it was either gold or it was something valuable. But he thinks they might have been crystals. He is, I think he's able to pick up the rest of what is going on there, and he walks around to the front of the wagon and makes sure that the horses aren't spooked, because there's some horses, or maybe there's something else, giant birds. I'm imagining, like, maybe we don't use horses here as well. Maybe there's other conveyances, like, horses are good, but they're not as fast as like an ostrich or something like that. He's got horses. You might see some other folks who might be riding ostriches, chocobos, if you will, from Final Fantasy. I'm thinking giant birds or something like that. There may be islands that Nathan has heard of where they ride lizards, that kind of thing. There might be some giant iguana or goanna type lizards that people use to ride because it doesn't, birds are food, in this case. Lizards not so much. Plus maybe the lizards last longer. I don't know. So he's able to go and make sure that these horses, which is something that exists, aren't being spooked or scared by people. And he slowly slinks away, and the last thing he hears is maybe the people helping the wagon driver, and the wagon driver is picking up the last bits of broken pottery and things. And as Nathan walks back into the bar, all of a sudden you hear the same wagon guy go, "Oh shit!" And that's when he realizes maybe that, oh, there's the crystals are gone, or some of the other things are missing, right? And you hear him yell for police, but um, Nathan is already in the Gilded Rose, sitting down, hopefully nursing his, because of how low the score was. He rolled a 26 in this case, so out of 75. Nathan feels confident that he could get away. And you know what? I'm going to retcon that because I don't think he would go directly back to the Gilded Rose, because that would be a little sus, and maybe it's not far enough away. So maybe his instincts, Nathan's instincts, is to, well, okay, I need to walk away and act like I just didn't come out of the bar and going right back into the bar. Maybe he walks back down the road a little bit, makes sure that when the police arrive that he's not seen at the scene, and that if the wagon driver did maybe identify him, that he's not in the general vicinity. And the other thing is, he doesn't want these crystals on him if he was stopped by law enforcement to be searched. So the first thing he's going to do is try to find a way to get rid of them in an easy way. So I'm going to say he's going to try to, he may go up the block, go around, and come in the back way of the Gilded Rose. Maybe there's a back way. And the first thing he does is maybe he's got a handkerchief or something that he has, or something that he can, drop these, because these are just loose stones, right? And maybe there's some dirt in there where he had to just grab them like really quick. So he's got dirt and stuff in them, maybe. So his boot's now dirty, but it's going to take some time to take his boot off and pull all his stuff out. So he wants to find a nice quiet place to do that. But eventually does that. I would say, it's not a huge, difficult issue. And so Nathan is, maybe takes another 30 to 45 minutes to make his way back to the back door of the Gilded Rose. And so, yeah, how long does it take him to get back to the Gilded Rose? I do want to ask that question. I want to say the closer it is to 100, the like every 10 points on the list here, or on the die here, maybe 10 minutes, right? So 100 would be like an hour and a half, which would be crazy, and there'd have to be a reason for that. So let's go ahead and roll that. He can't roll another 100 today, right? He can't roll a 61 though. So he rolled a 61. So it's going to take him roughly an hour to make sure the coast is clear, and get back to the Gilded Rose, which as we go here. So takes him, because he wants to be, after the day he had yesterday, the last thing he wants to do is be picked up for petty theft by the cops, right? Or by the local constabulary. So he makes his way back to the back door of the Gilded Rose. Maybe it's the service entrance where they bring in produce or something, or supplies. And so he comes in, he looks at, is it Lara? It is Lara, who's in the bar. she looks at him coming in from the other way. And she's like, "What the hell? I thought you'd gone." And what Nathan sees now is Bexley is sitting at one of the tables, and Bexley's boss is sitting at one of the tables. Alara had said, local cops came in about 30 minutes ago looking for somebody matching your description. As a person of interest, wanted to ask some questions. Bexley's over there, doesn't have a very nice look on his face. Bexley's boss, who I really probably need to maybe have something for Bexley's boss. Red hibiscus. The person we were trying to find was the person with the red hibiscus. They are not happy. And Laura's like, motions, Nathan. Nathan often wonders how much power Laura actually has as the bartender at the bar. She's been here forever, right? Bexley and them sit down. Bexley and them are sat down there, have had something to drink. Bexley looks at Nathan and goes, what in the almighty, hell are you doing? And Nathan explains, because by now I guess everything's kind of calmed down outside. There's Bexley says the police came in here because they saw you leave out of the Gilded Rose, which we don't need that kind of attention. I don't know what the hell's going on with you. We don't need that kind of attention. They said they saw you heading towards Gilded Rose, but then you turned and left, but they wanted to know if anybody had known you. And apparently it sounds like Bexley and them had come in while Nathan was out there, trying to help. Nathan does not have the rocks on him anymore. I would say he probably, I want to say he would have probably stashed them somewhere, or um, I want to say he might have, I want to say he would have stashed them, but he didn't want them to be found. So he tells Bexley, he's like, I have something from that wagon. They had crystals on that wagon, and I got them. And it's one of those things where he's leaning in, he's like, I got some crystals from that wagon. And Bexley perks up, and you see the manager. You see Bexley's guy. He was over there having a drink, and he's doing this, and all of a sudden he stops. He does this, and Bexley's like, "Are you shitting me? You better not be shitting me." Nathan says, "Well, we can go back and get them if you'd like." Um, I, I felt like I needed to square myself with the team because of that. And Bexley asks him, "Well, how many do you have? How many did you get?" I'm going to say that Nathan's not stupid. Nathan's not stupid in this case. He wants a cut, right? He's all about trying to make money for himself. I don't think he would tell them how many he actually has. I just wonder how greedy he wants to be. Because if there were 5 that he knows of, how many is he willing to give back to the crew? My thought is he's going to give them 3 out of the 5 and keep 2 for himself. Because he knows how to fence these things, right? He would know where those would potentially go, right? So I think he's going to tell them 3, and I think he's going to bluff. The thought is, how well can he bluff? I would say with his charisma, he's doing pretty good, right? So he might be better than average at playing poker. So what I'm going to say is that I'm going to say he's got a 60% chance of bluffing successfully when he says 3. Oh, God. Okay, so he rolled a 64. So that means he did not succeed, but he got close. So I like the idea of yes, but, or yes, and. So I would say, or no, and, or no, but. I would say no. He goes, yeah, got 3. I've got 3 that I was able to pick up. And Bexley looks at him and he's like, really? You're going to try to do this to me? And at this point, I would say Nathan says, oh, all right, I have 4. I have 4. And I'm going to say that's going to give him like an 80% chance. 56. Okay, perfect. So in this case, um, Bexley's like, oh, four crystals. That's pretty good. We need to go back and get those though. But first we need to go talk to Blaze. And so he is, you're sure that they're safe? And Nathan's like, yeah, I'm pretty good at hiding things. I should be okay with that. They should be safe for a few hours at least. And I'm imagining he ran back to where he sleeps or something like that, which isn't very far away, and was able, there's always hidey holes where you hide things. So maybe he's got, if it's not the place where he sleeps, it would be some other place that he's known where to hide, or when he's fencing goods, where to keep them for safekeeping while he handles and facilitates the transaction. So he's got some cubby holes, he's got some hidey holes where he can hide those things. And that's part of the high concept, right? He's a cunning and resourceful fence, part-time sailor kind of thing. So in this case, part of his high concept is as a fence, he would have places where he would want to keep those things safe and hidden. So they go down and he said, Nathan says, is Blaze here? And Bexley says, as far as I know, they've been waiting for you for the past 45 minutes. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't feel like I could come directly back here to make sure in case the local, you know, cops decided to, come and, if they saw where I was going, I didn't want them to come back here. He's like, well, that's very smart, but they came back here anyway. And um, so we need to go see Blaze. And so they make their way up to the upstairs, and um, I think Alara as they're going up, she says, "Y'all need to be a little more careful about coming out of that room. We will need to replace the flooring soon because it looks like too many people have gone through that already." And Bexley's like, "Yeah, we'll get somebody to fix that for you and add a new coat of paint or something to, spiffy up the room." Wink. And so they go upstairs to the upstairs room. They go through the tunnel to go down into the room. And as you remember before, the room is lit by a couple of windows that look like they might be coming from a skylight or from some street level window uh, that is barred, and part of the room is in darkness, as we remember before. There might be a little smoke in there, like somebody's smoking something. I don't want to say it's like a censer or something like that, but there's enough smoke in there that it looks like somebody's been in there for a bit, smoking. Very interesting smell, not unlike tobacco or weed, if you will, if you smoke. And they sit down at the table, and Nathan has done this before, so he says good morning, and he hears in his head, what's good about it? And you see Bexley's like, use your inside head voice. And Nathan's like, understood. And then he says it in his mind. Bexley sits down along with Bexley's boss, waiting for Blaze to say something. First thing Blaze says is, this tome has put us into a bit of a quandary. We don't exactly know what to do. The buyer, and I want to say, um, so did the buyer actually take the tome, or did the buyer actually come back after the fact and say, where the hell's the tome? I'm going to say, did the buyer actually get the tome? That's what I want to ask. And that would say, I'm going to say even odds. So I'm going to say yes or no. It's like 50-50. 50 or lower, yes, the buyer got the tome. Otherwise, no. So, 57. Okay. So in this case, it's a yes or no. It's not a yes and or a no but. In this case, the Bexley hears, and Nathan hears in his head, that the buyer did not get the tome, because the buyer came back to us asking where the hell is the tome and why the person who was supposed to deliver it to us didn't show up. And Nathan reiterates, and he gets defensive because he's like, look, nobody with a red hibiscus showed up before I got jumped. And Blaze is like, I'm sure of that. I'm sure you probably just got there a little early, and they were waiting for you. Might have been a different story had you have showed up on time and somebody had been there exactly with you. And I think Nathan probably is like, well, I like to get there early to stake out the place and check and see what's going on. Blaze says, in their head, that's admirable. I appreciate that. The problem comes is that somebody knew we were selling that book or giving that book and exchanging that book with another person. And they knew you were the one doing it. So either we have a leak inside of the Silent Accord, or some other method, whether it be divination or what have you, knew where to be when you were going to do that handoff. Either way, we've got to get that tome back. Nathan I think he's feeling a little better, because knowing that, maybe he wasn't double crossed, but he was just a, passenger of fate on the fate train. And so he's like, well, what he thinks, what are we going to do about this? And Blaze, what you see, and so I think what does Nathan see? And that's what I think. I think I'm going to ask that question in this case. So from an awareness point of view, I want to see what he sees. So I'm going to, I think it's going to be a fairly difficult roll. Oh, and it doesn't have to be. So he broke even. So he doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. He does see some movement, I think, in the darkness. It does look vaguely, it does look like a humanoid, as from what he notices. He sees something that looks humanoid, but he can't be precisely sure in this case. So there might have been some additional factors if he did roll really high, but he rolled a 5 on 1 minus 5. So he got a -4. +4 gives him a 0, right? He sees some movement. He sees an alligator, of shape, a dark shape on the floor. Maybe it's the alligator from before, he doesn't know. And so he says Blaze says to Nathan and Bexley, you need to go talk to the buyer and see what they might know. All we got was a messenger asking where the hell is the book, why we weren't making the drops. We need to go and discuss with the buyer what they might know, if they have any enemies, while we in the Silent Accord have some kind of investigation going on to see if we were sold out by anybody inside the organization. And I truly hope that that is not the case, because it could be dire. So um, Nathan says that sounds good. I think we can go over there today if we know the location of the person. And Blaze says, yes, you and Bexley will go. And um, you see a sheet of paper float, I would say, over to the table. It's like, that's the location of where the buyer has suggested they meet. And so Nathan says, okay, cool, that anything I can do to help with the investigation, because still feeling that myself. And you hear Blaze's voice, and please don't screw this up. And I want to emphasis that we can't screw this up. This would have been a very lucrative thing for us to have happen, but we're out money and we're out of book, and we need to get that book back and keep our customer happy, because we cannot be seen as having a reputation issue where we can't do business properly. And when we find out who's taken the book, we're going to deal with them in a harsh manner. It'll be very unfortunate for that person or persons. Nathan says that he understands, and he's going to go. And I would say he's a bit flustered at this point. But as he turns to leave, Bexley motions to him. He's like, you want to tell him about the other thing? I mean, it is your score. And I think Nathan's like, oh yeah, and without thinking out loud, right? Oh yeah, I get it. And Bexley's like, like, in your mind. And Nathan says, I have we scored some crystals from outside today with the ruckus that had happened. Blaze says, oh, that was you. And so she's like, no, Blaze asks, well, how many did you get? The problem is, as we can tell, Blaze is somewhat psychic, so it's going to be a fairly high roll for Nathan to completely lie and say how many he has. So I'm going to roll the D100, and I'm going to say that Nathan's going to say 4. And it's going to have to be a fairly high roll for him to bluff this. So he's going to say 4. Oh, God. Okay, so I rolled a 100 earlier. I rolled a 2 this time. 2 out of 100. So what I'm gonna do here is, since he rolled so poorly, he may have been flustered from having to talk to Blaze, but he doesn't have the wherewithal to shield his mind or whatever it is that needs to be done to protect himself against psychic intrusion. So what I'm going to say is, Blaze is going to look at him, and what you feel is an immediate, Nathan feels an immediate headache. And what you hear is, why are you lying to me? And he looks over at Bexley, and Bexley's like, you can tell that that is the only thing that is said to Nathan. And he thinks back, it's what we do, right? We're just trying to get my own cut. And Blaze says to Nathan again, I didn't see potential in you. you'd be dead right now. And there's a pause, and there's a long pause. And Blaze then says, go get those 4 gems and bring them back here. I think Nathan is shocked. I think Nathan is shocked. And Blaze will say, then we'll see what the function and and the purity and the clarity and everything is of those. So Nathan and Bexley, they get up, and I think Nathan's I want to say Nathan's a bit paranoid. As a fence, he's not really wanting to show people where he tends to hold his stuff, just in case he gets double crossed even by his own boss. But it takes them, I would say, a good 20 minutes to get to the spot where he's got the crystals. And they're free floating, so they're not like in a pouch or anything. They're not like in a pouch like this. So he reaches into the hole where they are, and he feels around, and he gets 4 of them. He keeps 1 in there, and he tells Bexley's been he's like, they're about 5 minutes away. You stay here, and I'll go get them. So he goes and grabs 4 of them, and so I don't think Nathan has an idea of the quality or being able to analyze these things like that. He does know that they're probably good quality. I don't think there's any bad quality crystals. So he reaches and grabs 4 of them. In this case, so it's like 4 squares, leaving 1, and you see him walk out, return, and him and Bexley return to the place with Blaze and gives them to Bexley's boss, who then you see him actually get up and walk into the darkness and hand them to Blaze. And you see Blaze, you see some activity in the background, and then you hear Blaze in Nathan's head say, "You've done well. You've done well." And that's why I'll let you keep the other one. Don't get caught with it. And so Nathan's feeling pretty lucky, and he knows that now that he has to go and get that crystal later, but it could be quite a haul. Some of those can range several thousand gold pieces from that kind of thing. So I think we're going to stop here, and I think the next session we're going to do is Bexley and Nathan will go to where they were supposed to rendezvous with the person with potentially the red hibiscus, and investigate the tome a bit more and see what we're going to do with that. Okay, so just want to thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for watching. I know that the mechanics are a little janky. I think between this episode and the next episode, I may finalize how I want to do this, if it's a resolution mechanic off a D100, or it's the Fate stuff, and I'm just using Freeport as the background for that. And so thanks to Sly Flourish for all the good stuff, and hopefully we will have some maps and things as we continue on through this campaign too. But other than that, I want to say thank you for watching. Take care, be kind to one another, and take care of yourself. Because as I'm fond of saying around here, you're the only you have. Okay? All right. Take care. Bye. Have a good day.